kids talking about?
Bittersweet Brooklyn.
Good morning, Brooklyn neighbors. Welcome to our third episode of Bittersweet Brooklyn. We're recording across from the skate park of McGuire Park Pool between north of Williamsburg and south of Greenpoint. My co-host is Meredith Chesney. We're joined by Danny Robo from Ridgewood, Queens. Our guests today are Christine Coco Murray from Williamsburg, Bedford Avenue, Ground Zero, and Judy McGuire from Greenpoint. Today we'll be speaking to the bitter and sweet of the so-called War on Brunch.
Judy's from Williamsburg.
I live in her building.
She lives in my building.
I know that you know who we are. It's like
I contribute to like MSN News, and I write a column for the Seattle Weekly and freelance at other places.
I moved from the Lower East Side to Greenpoint in '95, and I loved it so much, mostly because it was my first apartment all by myself.
Yeah.
I never got to live alone anywhere, and it was cute as hell. My building, 2 fireplaces, 2 skylights in the bathroom, really sweet neighbors. I knew everybody immediately in my little building. It was a Polish building. He had an illegal dentist office downstairs and elderly neighbors who I kind of looked after one of them. So I loved it. And I was there for maybe only a year and a half, and then a poorly thought move to Maspeth. I say poorly thought to Maspeth only because who I was living with there, that did not work out. And then you, Judy, got me my apartment. Yeah, I guess I moved in there in 97, 98 maybe. It could have been 96 even.
Yeah, but the neighbor who lived there before her was this poor old guy named Nicky, who was on oxygen, he had emphysema, and every day he got coupons in the mail for cigarettes, and it used to make me so angry.
He would sit in his window and smoke with an oxygen tank right next to him.
Yeah, we're lucky we had an apartment to get you in.
Yeah.
And our
Good
building
news
is
for it.
nice.
I love our building.
Pepto-Bismol building.
It's not Pepto-Bismol, it's rose-colored.
It's mauve. I would say mauve.
Okay, I'll accept
I like
that.
Pepto better, but it does need to be a little brighter. Maybe if somebody were to clean the outside, it would be more Pepto.
I know that you know who these cars. Mama Daddy.
I wrote a column for called Date Girl for the Seattle Weekly. That's probably like the
Tell us
most
about your rock and roll book.
Oh,
Yeah.
and the official book of sex, drugs, and rock and roll lists available at fine bookstores everywhere.
Tell us about the Mike and Judy show.
The Mike and Judy Show is a radio show I co-host in the back of Roberta's, speaking of hipsters, on the Heritage Radio Network on Sundays from 2 to 2:30.
I'm gonna call in and mess with you.
Okay, go for
Just
it.
because you are Roberta's, I'm gonna mess with you.
The pizza's delicious.
Yeah.
The spearmint skinny jeans.
She
make
got to
good
see
pizza.
Mario Batali and Guy Fieri there the other day. Isn't that exciting?
Very exciting.
God.
I'm not gonna give apologies to you. I know what I'm.
I make little collages, and sometimes they're up in stores.
And flowers.
And flowers now.
You're vice president.
Yeah, I'm a vice president too for a local prop company in the neighborhood.
There you
What's
go.
the name of if you?
It's Bridge Furniture and Props, and I'm very grateful that every day I get up and I don't have to take the L train to work. I can hop on my bicycle and bike to Greenpoint.
And Meredith Chesney has made both of us into ditzy blondes.
Yes.
Ah,
Some more recently than others.
it came more naturally for some than others too.
Ooh, burn.
I don't know which way that burn went.
We'll both take it. We're confused. We're blondes.
We're blondes with tiny women brains.
What? You have to start talking like this?
Oh my god! This
I
was like
last
hanging out on the
noticed.
stoop and chatting.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Lady, if we fight together.
I was living on the Upper West Side with a boyfriend in school full time, and I didn't have anywhere to go. So my friend had a friend who needed a roommate. It was a cute house with a yard. My half was $450, and it was like I came out here to see it on a rainy day, and I was like, this is the ugliest shithole neighborhood I've ever seen in my life.
Hey.
What street was the apartment?
Yeah. What street?
North 7th between Beverly and
Oh,
Beverly.
that is funny.
I was
That
just
is
like-
really funny.
I thought it was magical when I came out here.
When did you first come out here?
I came out here in 90, well, I started coming out here in 91 because friends I had were in bands and the rehearsal spaces, and we went to the ship's mass, and and then the apartment I lived in the East Village got condemned. Front page of the Post, one of the 10 worst buildings in the city.
Wow.
And I moved to Greenpoint, Nassau, and Houseman, and I would walk into Williamsburg on Bedford, and the trees would be all, flowering, and it'd be beautiful, and there was little coffee shops, and it was like, this is wonderful. And then I got the dream apartment, Bedford and North 7th, for $500, my own place.
That's huge.
And what year did you move into the neighborhood?
In 94, and then I lived over on North 7th for like a year and a half, and I got a job, so I moved into the building I'm in now in like 95-ish, and so I've been there ever since. And I've seen it change a lot, and some of the changes are good, like the ATMs.
The ferry.
The ferry is my
We
favorite
love the ferry,
thing.
yeah.
The ferry is like the best thing. If it weren't so crowded, Maison Premier would also be one of my favorite things, like dollar oysters. So there's more places to eat and stuff, but there's also just so many more people. I don't have to commute, and I'm really lucky that I don't have to, because the days that I do have to go into Manhattan, like around 8 or 9, are hellish. Like, they did all this development without any thoughts of infrastructure. I mean, the ferry can't carry that many people, and it leaves you in inconvenient locations. So, but yeah, like, I hated it when I moved here, but then I quickly grew to like it. Really changing. Okay, the most recent one was when I saw gay dads, because we haven't had gay dads. But the first one was when I went to Osnot, and this is when I still lived over on North 7th. And I
Where
went
was
there,
Osnot's?
it's on like
North 9th.
North 9th and
Barry.
Barry. I went there for brunch, because I used to do that sometimes, and they go, "Do you have a reservation?" I was like, "What?" Like, since when do you need a reservation for brunch?
I bet a lot of people back then were like, fuck a reservation, seat me now, give me a break.
Well, that ties into this war on brunch, though, because now none of these places will take reservations, and it's infuriating sometimes, but it's also, they make a shitload more money, so they think anyway, by not.
We're trouble with us. We're trouble with us. We're trouble with us. We're trouble with us.
I walk around the neighborhood and I see a lot of graffiti referencing Domino Sugar.
Oh,
Save
yeah.
Domino, free Domino.
Well, that's the new.
What are we saving it from? Who are we saving it from, and for who? What does that mean, save Domino?
Save it from two trees. Save it for the community. That's the intention behind it. The intention is there's not going to be any opportunities out there where we're going to have a parcel of building and land where we could dream big. And I think it's great, like the whole science museum thing, that's part of the dream, but they're like, let's take it even bigger. Let's not just look at it as luxury real estate. Let's look at it differently.
I'd like to have a university there. A University of Civic Engineering and... Meredith posted an article, Business Insider, I think. She quotes Steve Hindy, proprietor of Brooklyn Brewery. "We've sown the seeds of our own demise here." And this is coming from a principal who has made his money on alcohol, that is a driving economic force, much more so than the whole creative hustle.
Right. There's no space for the creative. Unless you fill in the movies and TV. If you throw that into the creative.
But it's so alien. The film and TV production, the industry is so alien to the neighborhood. It doesn't go out to solicit employment from people in the neighborhood. It doesn't seek their...
But it is employing people for that. The set decorators are here. I work for a business I think they could be doing a better job. I'm not saying that, but they're employing people who grew up here. They're employing people who still live here. They're middle class, good middle class jobs.
That's fair then.
Yes, they should be challenged to do more, But we should also be having dialogues and not posting like every time they put up their sign incorrectly. There was a time where, you know, Law and Order shot here maybe 8 years ago, 9 years ago, before the big boom of television movies. They shot in McCarran Park and they were like, we're gonna inconvenience you. They went to the Parks Department and the Parks Department's like, well, we don't care. You know, there's this little dog run that's there, you know. Maybe they could use a couple of dollars.
The inconvenience doesn't bother me as so much as the employment, and you've satisfied a lot of that for me now, because I was under the impression that they're alien to the community. Thank you for telling me that.
A lot
I
of
appreciate that.
I mean, it's interesting because I work for a prop rental business that's based here in Greenpoint, Williamsburg. Has grown because of what is happening over there. We started off as just an owner. Now it has almost 20 employees.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, we're employing kids who are local. We're employing kids that are, you know, out in Brooklyn. We interact with the TV and movies all the time. And, you know, I talk to the set decorators who are ordering our furniture. And they live in the neighborhood. They live on North 7th. They live in Greenpoint. They're not, it's not them. They're part of our community.
Hindy made some very interesting comments even previous to this article about the Brooklyn Navy Yard and its extension down towards Fort Greene as a tech economy, which I think needs some examination. Even though he's excluded a lot of perspective, in my opinion, there's something very interesting about the fact that he's basically implying that there is no tech economy that is emerging in the area, except possibly for this film and TV industry. What he is focused on is this tavern economy that he is a principal of. He and Felice Kirby and other, I would say on a lesser scale. But Steve Hindy is definitely principal of the tavern economy. I think there has to be some demystification about what exactly propels the economy forward in Williamsburg, North Brooklyn, and makes it the social model that people are following all around the world now.
Yeah.
All around the world.
I don't know if you read in the Times yesterday, the head of Zappos is looking to help revitalize the downtown area in Las Vegas. And he's thinking of recreating, you know, like a Haight-Ashbury or a Williamsburg type environment for people to come to visit when they're in Las Vegas. Right? That's hilarious.
Hilarious is probably not how I was feeling. Wow. Dismayed, maybe.
There's something exotic about what has happened here that people are drawn to. You know, Smorgasburg, love it or hate it, but Steve Hindy was in there making his partner was in there making the presentation for them to get their liquor license so they could have the beer garden.
Well, that's what I mean. I'm saying that wasn't that long ago.
No, that was last year.
So the space between that and Hindy saying to a newspaper, we've sown the seeds of our own demise here and I'm worried about my own location, my own placement here because my landlord has already announced to me he is giving me the heave-ho. Recently, Meredith Chesney posted an article on her timeline.
Oh, I read that.
Where Steve Hindy says, we've sown the seeds of our own demise.
Well, yeah, that's true. I mean, he did a lot to make this neighborhood more welcoming to fancy people.
Well, but he was priced out 10 years ago. He went looking for a warehouse space and couldn't get it.
From where? Where was he priced out?
He was looking around. But like, why didn't he buy?
Sky's the limit, right?
Yeah. Like, why didn't he buy? You know, or go out. You know, we just signed a deal for a spot over. I mean, there's still warehouses. I mean, that was the funny thing when he made the comments that he couldn't find warehouse space.
Christine was just observing that a year previous, Hindy was instrumental in Smorgasburg's success in East River State Park, and yet there he is. In fact, he seems to be acknowledging his own role. He's like, only a year though. I mean, that's quite an acceleration.
Yeah, I mean,
or deceleration.
It's been such a crazy turnaround here. I mean, at first it was nice to have an ATM available without having to go into Greenpoint or Manhattan.
I remember that. I remember that.
That's recent history. That's the last 10 years us having an ATM.
I remember after 9 o'clock, most of the neighborhood went dark.
Yeah.
And you could
I
say,
missed that. God, you could see this.
Oh, let's meet at the new bar, and everyone will go like, oh yeah.
Right, I know which one. Yeah.
You know, I stopped drinking at an early age, so.
Good for you.
That's why I'm not so swayed as Hindy is, right? But I say that as though I have any kind of influence, where I'm just a bum and Steve Hindy is a principal.
They just got, Grow NYC was bragging about, they did some cool thing with some upstate farmers growing grain specifically for his thing. That was cool. David
Pass
was
me that water.
happy about that, and I'm happy that that made him happy. Going on, it's the quote in the paper the other day, paving the way for his own demise. How did he phrase it?
Sowing the seeds of our own demise.
There you go.
There was a lot of things that were emerging simultaneously, like the internet. So it was this kind of idea that we were heading towards this paradisical moment or something.
I mean, I don't think we've learned from the rezoning yet. It's still sorting itself out, and I don't think people are taking lessons from Soho or other places and applying them here.
On the contrary, I think they are taking lessons from Soho.
Are they?
And applying them here.
Yeah?
What I think we're seeing is this accelerated, state-sponsored, but in communion with private interests to get the mega buck, bottom line. And you see, for us, we don't see any of the benefit of Soho because Soho is in many ways a diluted version of the previous mode of gentrification. And so on, and so on, and so on. And look, Bushwick isn't going to get anything out of its gentrification.
Bushwick is going to get nothing.
I feel like we at 234 North 11th have done that too by injecting so much fabulousness into the neighborhood.
Well, this is true.
That it's too glamorous now, and it's pricing us out.
We are first wave hipsters. There's no denying that, though. I won't deny that.
Listen, I was fabulous before, okay?
First.
There was fabulosity in this neighborhood.
It is, though, a matter of how do you describe fabulous, though, because it has gone from whatever words you want to use.
It's gone from fabulosity to fabulous.
Okay, true. There you go, because that implies a bohemian, a faux glamour, faux fabulousness.
Let's talk about some of those faux people.
It's first wave hipsters. I like that.
Well,
I don't know. I feel like I was more of a second or third wave hipster.
Well,
I moved here in '94.
Okay,
that's I consider that first because that's after the first New York Magazine article. That's like within 5 years of the first New York Magazine article declaring this.
What if I told you were like the 10th wave or the 100th wave? Because that's more accurate.
I would believe that.
That's probably true.
Because when we're talking about the gentrification and the consciousness of hip and whatnot, we can trace that to the New York Times' coverage in its real estate section in 1983. And that's fair to say that's how gentrification began. Because hipsters have always been in Williamsburg. Artists have always been in Williamsburg. The article you just posted, Miss Brit song, even though I disagree still with her overwhelming kind of negative, even though she put a lot of stuff in scary quotes, which I appreciated, because I do it all the time. She makes the same claim. Artists have always been in Williamsburg. Hipsters have always been in Williamsburg. You guys are 100th wave, maybe 99th wave.
Can we come up with a good
we've
number?
gotten a lot more attention, though, and it's only because of the internet, though.
Yeah.
We've been here since the internet was here, and that was...
We were also talking earlier on that it was a time when the internet was emerging and there was this kind of idealistic notion that we were heading towards this egalitarian society.
What's his face's book?
Robert and Ozzy.
Yeah, this is the last time that a neighborhood will grow as slowly as Williamsburg has. They will all accelerate much faster. Because when I moved here, people were still looking for places in the back page of the Village Voice.
Yeah.
There wasn't an internet.
What did they do for their pornography?
Back pages of the Village Voice.
Had to buy.
You got a lot of memory here. Let's talk about the back page of the Village Boys.
That was my first job out of college, the Village Voice.
Were you in charge of the classifieds?
No, I worked in promotion.
Oh, okay.
So promoting the classifieds.
That's interesting.
And now what are they? Nothing more than toilet paper.
Yeah, since they got rid of Musto.
First they got rid of my friend Rachel Kramer Bustle, who did the sex column. They got rid of Dan Savage, gladly. And then Michael Musto.
And before that, Jeff Weinstein,
Jay Homerman.
Jay Homerman.
Well, they got rid of all
Nat
the union
Hentoff.
guys. All the union guys.
All the union guys. Yep, as soon as they got to it too high.
It's an interesting parallel to the Village.
Yeah.
right? And
Did you-
especially on the east side.
Did you see this story in, I guess it's in Tomorrow's Times in the real estate section about all the Upper East Siders trading in their sort of Connecticut country homes or supplementing their country homes with like a West Village home because now they can get all the amenities that they crave from the Upper East Side on the in the West Village. Oh, about the people in the Upper East Side like vacationing down in the West Village because they're building these giant condos so they can enjoy the bohemian lifestyle of shopping at a small Marc Jacobs store that took out the biography bookstore, you know, and feel funky in their fabulous West Village condominium. So it's not just, I mean, it's all over this stupid city. But where are we going to go when we get priced out? That day is coming for me and Meredith,
It is coming.
you know, and that's scary. And nobody really feels sorry for you when your rent's under $1,000 a month. Like,
I feel sorry for you. What are you talking about?
well, you do, but nobody else does. None of my friends who are like paying $2,500 a month for a studio.
I mean, there's still stuff in the neighborhood, having looked recently. There's still rent stabilized stuff in the neighborhood. You just have to befriend the owner and not have pets. I mean, that's the problem when I went looking with the two demon dogs. Well, cats are different, but I got the demon dogs, and you know, none of the old timers who own the buildings want people with pets.
So what's going to happen? The projects are going to get filled with white people?
Maybe.
Is that what's going to happen?
They'll do a renaming like they did in that crappy little building down the street calling it Paisano Estates.
Wow. That's,
Or it'll be
They
a
will
Belvedere.
start giving them away to developers, though. Like they've been giving away park space to developers to get park space built, like in Brooklyn Bridge Park.
well, they're doing it in
And
Manhattan. They're building
stealing
luxury
the
condominium
parks out of
towers.
the public housing
Right.
to build. So that's, yeah, we've seen the future. It's here. You know, it's only what 3 terms of Bloomberg. It feels like 3 decades, but it's been a long time in preparation for an environment for this to flourish so perfectly in so many places. But we're hit just exponentially harder here in many ways. I think we're sort of a testing ground.
Yeah, what happens when you force everyone out who's lived here forever? I mean, but I feel like I'm glad that I know that the person who lived in my apartment before me went to the old age home before I took over an apartment that was going to be emptied. It wasn't like somebody got pushed out. Your apartment was, a guy died, so Meredith got her apartment. It's not like we pushed people out of their apartments. I mean, I did get an apartment in New Jersey once only because I was white. And I took it, and I still feel guilty about that. Like, years later, the guy goes, yeah, you know, in Irvington. You know, but it sucks, because, I mean, I feel some liberal guilt. But, I mean, I moved here. I didn't want to move here. I got pushed out of the Upper West Side. My boyfriend kicked me out. I had no money. I was in school full-time. And a friend was renting a house on North 7th between Bedford and Bury. The whole house was $900 a month, so...
Here we go again with the hospitality of Williamsburg, in opposition to the perceived hostility that's so popular in media, and not just media, but again, you know, when you read the public comments, you just get this perception like, wow, Williamsburg sounds like a hellhole. Why would anyone want to go there? And then here you are with your account of its hospitality, just like myself and everyone else I talk to. It's difficult for me to understand how this disparity exists between what we know of the neighborhood in our memories and how it's portrayed in media right now.
Our experiences aren't sexy or exciting enough as the experiences that they're reporting. I mean, I took over a friend's apartment who moved across the street. You know, that's how I ended up here, and it was cheap rent, and it didn't go up more than $50 for like 8 years. Every year the landlord came to like raise it up. I'd be like, I work in nonprofits, I'm making no money, please not this year. And he'd be like, okay.
Christine, let's make it clear though, there's nothing sexy or pretty about what's happening in media right now. In fact, I'm flabbergasted by how mediocre it is sometimes.
Well,
really.
I think the media is under, being sort of a member of it myself, like, there's a lot of pressure to produce stories because it's like a 24-hour, it's like the news cycle never ends. It's 24/7. So that's why, like, the cronut craze, like every single website in the universe has written about this stupid pastry because it's like they're so desperate to fill inches on the screen, and so like something like, oh, there's a fight at McCarran Pool,
But
Who
what we're
cares?
talking about fills 1,000 volumes. I don't
Yeah,
understand. There's no lack.
But you're
in
not
what-
going to sell ads on like, oh, my nice neighbor, was moving, so he gave me his apartment. It's like, oh yeah,
Fair
all right,
enough.
that happens to you.
Okay,
But
okay.
but if my nice neighbor like raped my dog and threw it out the window, like people are gonna read that story, and advertisers are gonna want to advertise on that page. It's all about making a buck, just like this neighborhood.
The alligator limbs of last week.
Oh, yeah.
Did they ever get to the bottom of that?
No, I don't think so.
But yeah, you see the same story on 50 million websites.
They worked that one though for 2 or 3 days though. There was the Elle magazine came out with theirs of the limbs were all over Williamsburg, and then somebody the next day, even I think Daily News, is like more have been found, and the photographs attached were the photos from that
There's a
first
Satanist
night
in the
that were-
neighborhood. That's what I'm waiting for. I'm waiting for people to really freak out.
Somebody did say that it was Satanists, and then there was, I forget who finally was like, well, you can buy the alligator limbs like in Chinatown. It's not that hard
Right.
to have that happen.
Although it would be kind of cool to get Williamsburg to be known as like a satanic hotbed.
I would
North
rather
7th
have-
and Bedford, the Hellmouth.
There's going to be no way we're going to be able to talk about the War on Brunch if we're extolling Satanism in the
We
neighborhood.
need a Mario
For real.
Batali, Gator Q, and Crocs shop.
I'm sure there will
I
be
think
one.
on
We have
Bedford.
an olive oil store. We can have anything.
On Broadway, we have over on Broadway.
There's sausage ice cream and cornbread ice cream on Kent Avenue
Yes.
now.
Really? Sausage?
Sausage.
Yeah, I heard
Disgusting.
about
So, both things I love separately. Cornbread, sausage, I mean, yum.
Cornbread
Ice
ice
cream?
cream isn't that bad, but with sausage, yuck. I mean, cornbread's kind of sweet.
It's not supposed to be sweet. You Yankees eat sweet cornbread.
that. Cornbread English muffins are kind of good.
They're disgusting. They're full of sugar and they're yellow. And they're horrible. That's not cornbread. It's the one thing I wish I would have imported with me that would have caught on. Is
Here we
real
are,
cornbread.
Bittersweet Brooklyn.
Emphasis on the sweet today, that's for sure. Let's go back to the bitter. Come on, we need balance. We need the juicy stuff so we can get our advertising too.
Well, you were talking about brunch before, and like the time that I knew the neighborhood was like,
Because Gothamist is a vile cesspool. I mean, on what its journalists post, and often I wonder if the journalists are playing. There's a certain kind of game that's being played on
Well,
metaphysical plane.
I don't think Gothamist is vile. I think they need page views just like everyone else. It's like if they want to stay in business, they have to come up with a sensational story, and it's hard to do. It's like,
Pro nuts.
yeah, I don't. That kind of story only comes around once in a lifetime.
Yeah. Elimination communication, though.
That was a
came
great.
up.
That was.
That was a fun period in media for that week.
What about the people who are subjected to the sensationalism then? What are the people who are victimized? What say them? Like, is the, page views, advertising, is that satisfying for them? It's not satisfying for me, by the way. I mean, I had an experience on Gothamist threads where, I felt like I had to go in and there was a lot of nonsense and it needed to be dispelled. Dudes started threatening my wife, threatening to rape my wife, to show up at her place of work, to fuck her, to do all kinds of obscene things to her. What can I say? That's my wife. So I told dudes, yo, where you at? Let's meet. Gothamists banned me. They didn't ban these sons of bitches who are saying these...
Well, comment moderation is a thankless job, and they need to be better at it. Anyone who threatens somebody needs to be banned for life, and they can trace their IP address.
And we can laugh at it as insignificant, but it's clearly influential because it influences dozens of people. The commenters themselves.
It empowers them, that's for sure.
If people didn't read these stories, they wouldn't exist. If people wanted to read nice stories, that's what would be being written. I mean, it's like give the people what they want. Because, it's so hard to make a living in journalism right now. It's like, it's really, really hard. I feel like the lone representation here.
I was actually hoping that you did work for Gothamist so you can go back and tell those motherfuckers to go fuck themselves, but I'm
Well, you've done it now.
Right.
I feel the same kind of about all of them, though, really, to tell you the truth. People are constantly, I'll post stories from the New York Post on my wall, and people will tell me, like, consider this source. It's like, well, fucking done out. It's the New York Post. And when I read Gothamist, I kind of sometimes feel the same way when I read the Brooklyn paper stuff. I'm sorry.
Where's the balance?
Don't-
I'm bothered by the New York Times too, but where's the New York Times or even the Village Voice from the 1960s here in Williamsburg? Is this what we're gonna get? Gothamist and Elle magazine?
Yeah, well,
Brooklyn Magazine also.
Williamsburg gets written about a lot more than like other communities that are way more screwed than us. Who's writing about Gravesend or Bed-Stuy? Well, Bed-Stuy a little bit more because those people just bought that edgy $1 million condo.
It's
But
a
you
little
know-
smaller than what we have now, but
But Brownsville, the only
It's
stuff
gritty,
that gets
we love
written
it.
about there is like shootings.
Yeah.
And so I would say that this neighborhood gets a lot of media attention, way more than it deserves. Like the pool coverage last year was ridiculous. Oh, kids got into a fight at a pool. I grew up in New Jersey. Kids always got into fights at pools. It's nothing like, that's just what teenagers do. They're all assholes. It doesn't matter what color they are. They just kind of suck. I mean, not all of them, but they get into fights.
It's all part of the machinations, though, of the real estate industry and development industry. It needs to stay in the headlines every
Well, that didn't
month
serve them
anyway.
well.
You know what? All attention is good attention in the end for how this has been worked.
public pool in the neighborhood is really bad, but we have a great pool in the condo that you
And they
have.
all have pools.
Yeah,
all
they
these
all
condos
have
have pools, and that's an amenity. But this is I still contend that it's basically a nice visual amenity. If you're on the 10th floor of something looking at the park, like it's a pretty thing to look at.
Well, yeah, I
You know,
never
but they
got
don't
how
have-
that park was sold as like an amenity. Because you look out your window, there's a track, and then there's those giant lights that they put in, all like till what 11 o'clock at night. Like
When the first people started filling into the condos, they started complaining about the soccer lights as if they never noticed them when they were buying.
We mentioned this in the first episode, that people moving in don't seem to understand the nature of what's going on in the neighborhood. They wanted it to be an event space, even though it can be noxious, the park pool.
right.
And there was all this bafflement about why the event space then transitioned into the pool. There was a bitterness, like, hey, we want shows to keep happening there, even if people didn't enjoy it, just because of the conspicuous consumption, so they could say, yo, I've got a condominium by McGuire Park Pool, and so hip band played there. I mean, I don't really like them, and the earth shakes, and I wonder about the foundation of my building sometimes.
I have to leave because
Right.
it's so loud.
Right.
And
But hey,
500 people peed on my doorstep.
and people are smoking joints and
Puffing nitrous oxide.
puffing nitrous oxide, and we laugh. I want to make sure that people know I don't have a problem with people's behavior whatsoever. People canoe, huff, whatever they want to do, I'm okay with it. It's the disparity in the police coverage that bothers me,
Oh,
because
yeah.
it boggles mind. A similar crowd of black and Puerto Rican kids were doing the exact same thing. It would be the
They
guerrilla
would have
warfare
the
that we're
riot.
talking about
but
for real.
that's somebody on the community board was saying how you have at Pies and Thighs on the south side, you have clusters of white kids waiting to get into Pies and Thighs. If you went to any other corner on the south side and you had that same size of kids hanging out, the cops would be there in a minute. And that's, how does that play out to the people who live in the neighborhood? That's just wrong.
I mean, we think right away of Stop and Frisk. Why is it then that Williamsburg is such a popular place for Stop and Frisk, but none of the white kids are being subjected to it except for this young lady, Mrs. Rosenbaum,
Oh,
in
yeah,
New
the
York
Bard
Post, who
student.
was, and that the police were clearly wrong if her account is correct. They were clearly wrong, but her experience was exceptional in Williamsburg. There are no white kids. I know white kids brazen in Williamsburg. I was walking down Bedford Avenue once. I was amazed because people were screaming and carrying on. These white kids were playing around, playing like they were fighting. And it was actually kind of rough. And I looked at them, and the first thing I thought was, there's absolutely no way anyone from the neighborhood could ever carry on like this
No.
without having the
So,
police
like,
come
10
and bug
people
out.
would have called 911 for the young black thugs
Right.
fighting. No, and Bloomberg says we haven't stopped nearly enough minorities and we stopped too many whites.
That's because now he's instituted all this fining for marijuana, and he wants to fill the coffers. That's my conspiracy
Well, then
theory.
they should bust more white people.
Just walk around the neighborhood and you get some better drugs than just marijuana, I bet.
I bet the dealers are going to be listening to this particular episode very closely. What?
What?
Ooh, what? Let's emphasize the quotations that should always go around War on Brunch. That's ridiculous.
That was a media created term around what was, around enforcement of an actual law that was actually on the books. Business owners who are opening up brunch establishments hadn't bothered to read any of the actual laws that would apply to them in running a business.
Before we get into the right and the wrong of the law, let's examine this war on brunch.
I've always wanted
Like
to kill
what kind of
them.
warfare? Like are people descending and like are there gorillas rappelling from the rooftops? I don't understand. Like people shooting at white kids trying to get mimosas? I don't know. Who's being subjected to a war here?
You know, the hipsters often feel like, or claim that they're being attacked, and brunch is a buzzword
Right.
for hipsters. None of my self-respecting 30-year-old friends would dare post, who wants to go to brunch on Facebook? Like, that's such a fucking cliche. And of course, here and there, I have been known to brunch, but I call it breakfast.
This is
lunch.
dramedy though.
Lunch.
This isn't comedy because a lot of this is serious. Because we're laughing because it's so preposterous. War on brunch. Simultaneously, it is an accurate representation of the kind of emotions that have been expended, the energy that's been expended on this thing. Because people, I've had arguments with people on the street where they start flipping their wig, and I'm
About
just like,
brunch?
right? Because then they start talking about they're being persecuted. And there are all these other issues that are being tied into the act of eating brunch that are larger, clearly, right? So I had a conversation once right on the corner of across from the Park Luncheonette with some dude, artist in the neighborhood, and he started bugging out. He was getting like really upset. He said that the cafes perform a community service and that they're being persecuted. And so he never said who was us or they.
Could you just clarify, like, how are the cafes? What is the war? I really haven't. I think brunch is stupid, so I haven't really paid so much attention to it.
The media portrayal of
No, let's be real.
2 years
What we're concerned about is private appropriation of public space.
Okay.
And for many people, myself included, there are in fact larger issues to people eating out on the street. Personally, I don't care if someone is having mimosas or dousing themselves with it, whatever it is that people are doing, I don't care. Big issue here is how it converges with the fact that there was an attempt made to decommission that intersection and make it a public space, ostensibly.
By 5 leaves.
5 leaves, yes.
Not by 5 leaves, but by people who are...
No,
But the space geographically.
that street,
That's right, geographically, you're exactly right.
Well, I think
First block of
The
Bedford.
intersection of Lorimer, Bedford Avenue, and Nassau Avenue. So there was a recent attempt to decommission it
Yes.
and make it into a public park space. But for me, that's all ostensible. Creeping privatization, that is what's really important here. And I think a lot of people were feeling that. So there was a backlash. And this backlash didn't know how to articulate itself. So it often articulated itself like, hey, fuck these college kids, hipsters, eating bacon. I hate it. When it really wasn't that. People just didn't, I think people were threatened by the fact that they're going there, and there are in fact church people who are going there. We should get to Reverend Ann Kansfield's intervention, which I thought was inappropriate, but we'll get to that in a second. But there were churchgoers who were going there, and they felt that their public space, their public transportation, their transit, whatever, was being appropriated. Those are all entirely valid. I just think that when it comes down to it, like when people are commenting on public comments thread, we're just inclined to be stupid on the internet.
Oh yeah, you should never read the comments and stuff.
well, unless you want to laugh.
or get your feelings
cry.
hurt, like,
Oh yeah.
it's just there's so many. When I want to hate humanity, I just read New York Post comments, and it's just like,
Why go that far? Just go to Brooklyn Paper.
oh yeah.
I read all the comments that pertain to local issues. A lot. I think it's actually important. More is often revealed in the comments than it's ever revealed in the articles about what's really going on and how people feel about it, right or wrong. We need to understand people, and that's a way to do it.
These are our
It
neighbors.
is a way. That is a way to understand them more. It's just so many people, it brings out the worst in them, and the most racist, vile comments, sexist, disgusting things. So yeah, I guess if you can just
could stomach it.
Yeah. And I don't always have the stomach.
Let's go back to the War on Brunch.
It's just so preposterous.
It is.
I'm gonna fight for my
Who
right.
named it that? Did Aaron Short name it?
Aaron
War on
did.
Brunch? Aaron.
Aaron Schwartz. That's his claim on his tombstone. It'll say.
Let's all take a deep breath. Aaron Shore.
Aaron, I invited him to be on the show. He did not reply to my message yet, but I'm hoping
You probably
that
will.
he would come on.
He may just be off the grid right
It's
now.
probably in Albany.
Journalists don't always have control over headlines.
They never
There are-
do.
Oh,
So the
so
War on
who is-
Brunch may not have been coined by him.
No.
But he trademarked it. Just kidding.
Yeah, journalists barely have control over what they write. I mean, it goes through an editor and it goes in the print.
So Brooklyn Paper ultimately is responsible for this term, War on Brunch, because Aaron Shore was writing for Brooklyn Paper at the time.
I guess. Yeah.
And the attitude about it being a war on brunch, even when people are not using it, because they know it's ridiculous. I mean, it's insulting, in fact. We are engaged in a war. So when someone says there's a war on brunch, you just want to smack them sometimes.
Or throw some brioche French toast at their head.
With syrup, right?
Artisanal.
Some thick cut bacon.
These other papers, Gothamist, one of them, for example, and Elle Magazine, but to a lesser extent, also have their own derivative of the war on brunch. They call the law that applies draconian and use a
So
similar...
like mimosas before noon is draconian? Is that what the thing is?
That's what's being claimed.
There has been a new law that has now you can brunch at 10
Can
a.m.
you describe it, Christine,
You
please?
can brunch at 10 a.m.
You
on
can brunch at
Sunday.
10. Oh.
Thank God.
They got our council member, Steve Levin, on the forefront of that. Thank
That
you,
is-
Steve.
That is an important issue. I'm so pleased that was resolved.
I know some of the NAG kids were very concerned about the brunch. They were wrongly prosecuting some of the local businesses. And you
Persecution.
know, yes.
Let's go back to this because they were using this word.
Yeah,
This
I
word is
believe
being
that.
used.
I believe
Persecution.
so. Maybe I
Only
make
the only people who would ever use persecution to do with brunch are people who have never experienced any kind of persecution or even read a history book. If they're considering not being able to drink at 10 a.m.
Well, but it was the local businesses who were then not being able to. All they wanted to do.
It's capitalism, baby. What can we say, right? That's the way it goes. Like, what's this nonsense that of persecution? Like, what does that mean?
Well,
It suggests
hipsters
something
are-
physical, palpable.
Somebody made the claim that hipsters are like the Jews and are being persecuted as a minority group. I've read this over and over again.
Oh my God.
Ethan Pettit, in fact, makes this claim that hipsters are the new Jews. That's exactly how he phrased it, new Jews, which... How anyone could be Jewish and not be offended by that, I find striking.
Why
but
don't we make them the new gypsies?
He's not affiliated with the Unite the Beards thing. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's
The
okay.
Unite the Beards thing is sort of similar
Oh, yeah,
to
bring it.
that notion of the Hasidic guys are a lot like the Beardos somehow.
They all hate women. Like
That's an interesting. You want to go? You want
You want to go there?
Tell us some more.
Let's go there,
I'm not gonna
Judy.
go there.
You are. You there? What are you talking about? You here? When you here, you there.
It's the Shabbat House guys that own the mini mall building on Bedford Avenue.
Yeah.
They started a campaign, and I don't know who their goy shiksa is, or what's the male term for that? I don't know. I don't know. Is he an artist? Is he? I don't know.
Who?
The Unite the Beards guy, the Gentile that he is working with.
I've never even heard of this campaign, but thank you for telling
Oh, I
me.
have
because
a
I'm gonna
poster in
look.
my hallway.
Yeah.
I have to show you the
I
poster.
mean, it was definitely a flurry of activity for maybe 48, 72 hours.
Yes,
Right for that.
exactly. Yeah.
But unite the beards to what end?
So that the Hasids and the Beardos can get along, because I guess they're squabbling always over modesty and bike lanes.
So what are going to be the concessions? The Satmarim shall no longer be modest. Not going to happen.
No, they're going to, the dividing
Excuse me.
line is going to be Broadway. As long as they can manage south of Broadway, the Hasids, and then the hipsters can have north of Broadway.
This is in their
No, I
manifesto?
don't know.
Oh God, I thought you were serious.
I thought
Well,
they had,
but-
Me
Boundary
too.
lines, because
Manifesto.
boundary lines have come up. It has come up before. People have thrown out the notion of like this area.
Well,
You know,
it is.
don't touch it.
I have
and
when I was a
we'll get
kid.
along.
When I was a
Yeah.
kid, I was, bellowing and telling people, "You come west of Metropolitan Avenue, there's gonna be some shit."
Broadway is going to be a fighting line.
Division
Because,
and Division Avenue is
yeah, but Broadway, because of that Broadway hotel, because of that event space, I went to the state liquor license community board meeting 2 weeks ago. Orthodox were there in force. There were, I've seen one there, maybe two, but that night there were 5 or 6 of them there. And that's the battle line. They're drawing that as, they don't want the big development there. They don't want to not be able to get over the bridge in 5 minutes. They don't want people creeping down their area. They're getting serious about this. Good for them.
It looks like such a tasteful little development, though. What is it, like 80 stories or something?
And it's got
40.
40. It's still taller than the bridge. Though.
Yeah.
It looks like three fingers, kind of, right?
Yeah.
Like,
As opposed to the finger.
as opposed to the finger building. I was like, what's this called in the sexual underground? Like, there's got to be.
Williamsburg
working your way
deserves
up
so
to
much
fisting.
more, man.
Yeah.
Or the no landscape, the no waterfront.
The Virgin Fist.
Oh,
Maybe. Sorry.
we're gonna have to put a parental advisory on this episode.
Sorry, kids.
No kids listen to this episode.
Yeah, I'm sure kids are like, oh, let's hear more about the War on Brunch. Screw the cartoons. I want to know where I can get my cornflakes and mimosas.
So if it's not the kids, because it seems like children, who's reading this nonsense? Who's circulating this nonsense? War on Brunch, because it's circulating.
Well, not that, but... Well,
Are you?
Anything that's like people who never come visit in Brooklyn, like when we first moved here, it's like now they all come here to go out for drinks and stuff, like Manhattan people, and it's so funny, it's like reverse bridge and tunnel now. So they're reading it and they feel a little... The other thing that I wonder about is like the whole hipster Williamsburg thing. It kind of priced hipsters out. Now it's mostly what they used to call yuppies. But now...
Well, I think there has to be some more examination into this word hipster. Let's go back to the War on Brunch.
You're making me hungry.
We're gonna go have to have brunch after this.
5 Leaves, let's go.
5 Leaves is the most uncomfortable restaurant, unless you're a skinny hipster person. It's so... You're so jammed in there, and it's just... I don't care how good the food is. I'm always just like... I feel like I'm so claustrophobic when I go in there. Even outside isn't so great.
I ate there once.
I ate there once too. No, twice.
Twice.
Did you enjoy it?
It was all right. I had a quinoa salad, a big bowl. I
That's very
make that for
appropriate.
myself though, like every day. So it's not, they were nice. The wait staff, the girl, I don't know, but nothing compels me that I saw on the menu anyway. I am pretty picky and I don't eat out a lot lately. I cook a lot lately, but.
The kale? The mountain of kale? Really? That doesn't compel you?
No, God.
Jesus.
I'm from Tennessee. This whole kale craze is just ridiculous to me. I hate it when
Don't
food,
hate.
when
It's good for
food's-
you.
No, it's great for you. It's when it becomes trendy, when it becomes a thing. I mean, I remember in the 80s when all of a sudden avocado, oh my God, we have avocados. We're a big deal.
But at
We're
least that's
cilantro.
like
We're
nature's butter.
Food
But
trends.
avocado
are
with
so-
kale is really yummy.
Oh God.
I saw a kale
Stop.
mojito the other day.
I saw that on
Like, enjoy it, but don't put it in everything.
Yeah,
You don't need
yeah.
kale cornbread.
Well, excessiveness is just the everything that sums up all of this that's gone on. It's not that, progress and development or commerce are wrong or bad, but it's just the exponential increase of all of it in a short amount of time. It's really overwhelming. And we've just now started to see sort of the middle area of it. It hasn't even really fully impacted us how it's going to because of, as you mentioned, the lack of infrastructure and planning. It's going to be unreal.
Where will all these people eat brunch?
It's seductive.
Well, but the good thing is that a lot of them will take cars to work, so they won't have to take the subway.
Right, so they'll just
they'll-
pollute it even more than it already is here.
Well,
In these imaginary parking garages, how are there going to be enough parking for all these people?
no, car service.
Oh, car services.
The finger building, it's really
Oh.
amazing. At 6:30 I walk the dogs every day, the demon dogs that is. And we walk by and we watch 2 or 3 car services pull up to pick up people to take them to Wall Street or wherever you need to be at 6:30, 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning.
I mean, listening to all this, and I've never eaten at either Locale or Five Leaves.
I'm gonna say I've eaten at both places and I've enjoyed both of them.
Okay. So we know that it's not about, when we hear people beefing about what's going on, I want to talk about how the other side, reporters characterizing it, they seem to characterize it as though we got beef with people having mimosas, or we got a beef with people having pancakes before 12 o'clock or something. So we know that isn't it.
Let's talk then about that hot zone map that came out of the Yelp reviews using certain buzzwords where certain people are. And it was really interesting stuff when you look in there, and there's one for, you can look over hangovers and see the hot spots of, reviews written on Yelp for hangovers. So like the Union Pool, Macri Park area is one. Enid's has a hot spot over them. And then the different terms, there were yuppies, you could look for different food terms and whatnot. And you do have to sort of, you look at these maps and in these words together, and it does paint a picture of population, who's up to what going on in the neighborhood. And so for me, with this whole War on Brunch that we want to talk about, it's really not so much about the breaking of a law of, wanting to drink alcohol before a certain hour on the sidewalk. It's a culture clash more, I think, about some resistance pushing up to this new culture of people that want to brunch in a seemingly, to some people, maybe myself included, probably, that feel entitled to take over real estate, public property, and then operate it in a really unprofessional sort of, hey, this is the wild, wild west. Let me just throw out a shingle and I'm going to take over this and we're going to have our fun at the expense of people that are just trying to walk down the sidewalk sometimes. And it's not that the two couldn't coexist peacefully if there were some training maybe and responsibility by these restaurant owners to grasp that, there are people that aren't looking for a spot to brunch, that are just trying to get down the sidewalk. And you'll hear people defending that by going, well, you could just walk around. There is another side of the sidewalk. And yes, of course that's well and true, but doesn't it make more sense for us to just get along and for people to be mannered and polite and respectful of that space and really empower themselves to feel like, hey, I'm running this little show here, so let me do it in a nice way. Why does it have to, it seems like it's chaos. You reach these intersections where, the sidewalks are full of people standing there and just sort of oblivious to anybody else.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like the bar that used to be across the street, Royal. The owner wouldn't even he wouldn't get a bouncer to tell people to shut up when they're screaming at 3 in the morning. When he finally put up a sign, I don't know who convinced him, but it was like sideways.
Yeah.
As a fuck you to the neighborhood. And I would guess that a lot of these businesses went into these places, looked at it immediately as an adversarial relationship when they could just be, like the new bar that's there, they seem pretty under control, on the corner of 11th and Union.
This is from the top to the bottom, because everyone is characterizing it and is adversarial and enabling it. So, for example, when Elle Magazine interviewed everyone about Domino Sugar, myself included, but Stephen Levin was interviewed, he referenced it as a Gold Coast. He referenced the area as a gold. When you use language like that, you're talking about people making claims and jumping claims and having no respect for space.
Yeah.
No, that happened when Evan Thies is still working for City Storage, and A, went to a public meeting and didn't disclose A, that he was working for City Storage, and B, that he goes, well, what's the price of City Storage to the city? We couldn't calculate the price. We actually could calculate the price, and I bet you Norman Brodsky at some point is going to want his legacy not to be the guy who prevented the park because he was too greedy. Evan, first disclose that you're working for them. Let's not, and this is back to the beginning of our conversation today, is how people go around and don't disclose the information, who they're working for, who's paying them. And you take them at face value, and it's really, there's a backstory, there's a back alliance, and as citizens of New York, the world, but also Williamsburg, you have to everybody who speaks at a public meeting, everybody who speaks anywhere, you have to look and say, what's their motivation here? Like, you know, some of people just want to have a nice place to live, and that's true. Some people want to protect their real estate, and some people have other motives, you know, they want to make sure they get paid, like, and that's fine, but we don't have to be secretive about it. If we put it on the table, it's a lot easier for us to find a resolution than if you act like you're not getting paid.
So what's secret about the War on Brunch? What's secret? What are the secret desires here? What are the secret motives? Because again, it's fair to say most of the people in the neighborhood don't care if people are having food at a certain time. They don't care. So there are other issues that are playing here. What are the secrets? What are the what's not being disclosed?
If you're coming out strongly against something like brunch, you're probably less likely to be taken seriously when you're against other things.
But
you know?
have people come out strong against brunch? Who?
I don't know. I'm just
Tom
saying.
Burrows. This is hyperbole. It's to sell papers.
In the media, yeah, it was all about selling papers and people getting ink in the getting quoted in the conversation and showing their allegiance to the poor, the few places that were getting ticketed. Yeah, I think that was clearly some people wanted to get quoted, and it was about. So this week it's 5 leaves, next week it's local, 3 weeks from now it's, you know, they could keep moving it along. I mean, I think Tom Burrows and I think the community board, the point was about enforcement, that there are laws being broken over here, that if we had a little bit of enforcement, not a lot, but a little, maybe we could start to correct some of this stuff, like the Charleston taking over all of Bedford Avenue with their outdoor cafe.
How is that allowed to even happen? I don't.
Well, what's funny is, like, sometimes it's not because they got their sidewalk cafe permit, but then they didn't have their liquor license adjusted to include the sidewalk cafe, so then they couldn't serve drinks out there. But it's all about, you know, if somebody just enforced it once.
But isn't the undercurrent to all of this about old timers versus newcomers?
Yes.
Ultimately, it boils down to some resentment and the feeling that the new generation is being catered to.
Well, I've myself have disputed in the past that this is an issue of, for me, when I look at it like this is a symptom in case of gentrification. And anyone who argues that gentrification is young versus old is denying all the youth who are going to be displaced by gentrification, who are going to be denied the benefits of place that gentrification promises. To be honest, when I saw it, I thought it was nonsense. I barely paid attention to it really because I was like, this is nonsense. War on Brunch, this is embarrassing really. That this is what gets people passionate in our neighborhood. There's so much that's going on, infrastructure, the fact that we've got a homogenous landscape, so much more pernicious and evil that people should be thinking about, and here we are getting quoted and jockeying for position so someone can hear us say, I'm against or I'm for the War on Brunch. It was ridiculous.
And to have a policy change.
Wow, it's even right, to expend time on it, it's mind-boggling. I was most interested by Reverend Ann Kansfield's intervention in the issue. Her church is not in the proximity of the War on Brunch, the front lines.
So she said what?
Her opinion was solicited specifically to counter the argument that the sidewalk cafes are an obstruction to churchgoers. But the reporters at the time never went to any of the nearby parishes, congregations, or churches. They went instead to Reverend Ann Kansfield, who's like 10 blocks away.
Because she's liberal or something?
Because she's a hipster.
Okay.
And she has a hipster population. So there she is, using the authority of the church, because for some people this was about church authority, so she's being invoked to counter this on behalf of consumption. I thought it was an abuse of her position as a person of religion, as a reverend.
She was asked a question and she gave an honest answer. I mean,
she should be commended for her work with the poor at her church, and we should acknowledge the disappointment that she underwent when the beds were denied at this church that she goes to. So
But there's also, you know, what her quote was in the paper. I didn't read the story. I don't know. But even if she said like, yeah, I think it's a silly fight.
She was quoted multiple times, by the way.
But you should. It doesn't matter. They only use what quotes matter to the story. She could have said like, but it doesn't really affect my parish. You should talk to this church. And they didn't put it in. Who knows? I mean, I wouldn't.
That's fair.
Unless she said something really definitively awful, I would give her the benefit of the doubt.
That's fair. We should ask her for a response then. That was the part that bothered me when religion is invoked in this argument, because on both sides it was problematic. People were invoking religion to say, hey, we shouldn't be having these brunches because people are drinking. That's problematic. Yeah. And then on top of that, someone who is endorsing or seemingly endorsing consumption on behalf of her congregation interjects so she can counter this other abuse of religion. And it was abusive all around.
Catholics were all too busy to return the phone call to Aaron.
It might have been interesting
drinking anyway. Come on.
if Aaron would have stood in front of the restaurant on a Sunday morning and seen people try to get around it and have a problem with getting by or being obviously little old church ladies, whatever that may look like, and actually talk to somebody that's trying to get to church that it affects. But then again, we're back to, I think it has nothing to do with getting to church.
Yeah.
None of it is.
The Holy Family Church is the church that's directly impacted. It's the closest. Mm-hmm. No one sought their opinion as far as I know. No one cared. I agree with you. I think the person who should be examined here is the reporter. Why would you go to Reverend Ann Kansfield?
Bring us Aaron Short!
Right,
Bring us Aaron!
Isn't it
I'm okay with that.
to
I'm
order
alright
a
with
drink before 12 though on a Sunday? It's still
Probably illegal to get one. I don't know. I mean, that goes back to like blue laws.
I think you could
because
set the
it's-
tables up, but you still can't order a drink
That's
until
right.
noon.
That's right. We
But
should
you
clarify
could,
the
you
law.
could have bacon before noon.
You're gonna bacon
On the
before
street,
noon, but
yeah.
And our
a virgin Bloody Mary. Oh, I used the word virgin twice today. Ooh, that's 3 times.
Well, so then we know there's really a hidden dimension to this recent thing with the law, changing the law, right? Because it's not about getting people alcohol before 12. It's to facilitate commerce.
It's all
A
about
particular
money.
type of
Money.
commerce, not just commerce. Because not all commerce, I'm not going to be hypercritical about all commerce. The other day, on 4th of July, our friend Ziggy came over, and Ziggy was trying to tell me, he's like, Meredith, I really appreciate all the stuff that you post on your wall when you're talking about privatization of park space, and then he asked me, and so I assumed like he'd read, something that I'd written, and he goes, but I gotta ask you, are you against all stores? Are you against stores
Are you a communist?
renting
Yes, you're
property
against stores.
and being in,
You're a Luddite.
crazy though. Like I was really like, boy, I really need to brush up on my writing skills. Or, like it's
Someone
enough
needs to
already.
brush
I
up.
talk about it
On their
far
reading
too
skills.
much. But, it's perfectly reasonable. I understand that plenty of people don't agree with me on that. One thing I think if you could go back 500 years and if you ask a 10-year-old kid what are parks for, they would have told you the whole same thing historically. It's for strolling, it's for playing sports, it's for picnicking, it's for doing this or that. It's not until the Bloomberg administration where you can ask a teenager what parks are for, and it's where I can go shopping.
It's where NYU can have their graduation.
Yeah,
It's like,
all
yeah.
the programming is just so different under Bloomberg than it was
So we're opening up a
before.
Shake Shack, right? Good news.
Somewhere there's no, but I'm sure plenty of people will love it.
I just hope we get the top dollar and we don't sell it out like we did Smorgasburg. I'm not a super fan of selling out our parks, but if we're gonna do it, let's get top dollar. I mean, when Urban Rustic opened up their little portable grill stand, to get that concession, he had to put in garbage cans. He put in 10 picnic tables and chairs. And I wasn't a super fan of now there's a cart in this little triangle in McCarran Park, but I did like the garbage cans, I did like the seating. It has created a little environment over there that has really flourished. I don't mind that he
That's
had.
totally different than a Smorgasburg. Having a food cart
Well,
and a Smorgasburg, there's no comparison.
But it is selling out our parks, and Smorgasburg, if you did it once a month, maybe it wouldn't have been.
What is Smorgasburg? Because there are going to be people who don't know. What is Smorgasburg?
Smorgasburg is the food version of Brooklyn Flea that has taken over a large group part of the East River Park on Saturdays, and Brooklyn Flea takes over on Sundays every weekend from April to October in this park. I think it's a third of the park, they say, is lost to this private enterprise that is giving back to the park $1,500 for each day or each week? Each day.
$1,500?
$1,500 that then goes to the nonprofit that runs the park. That's the fundraising arm, but doesn't necessarily.
And this nonprofit is who?
That it's not OSA. It's on the National Parks Trust, something like that. I do not believe that it is written in a way that that money has to go back into that park, and that's the problem with a lot of these concessions that are happening, is that the money goes into the general fund unless the private nonprofit partners with the restaurant that opens up. So Shake Shack, if Shake Shack comes to McCarran Park and is not partnered with OSA, that money will go into the park's general funds and will be spent throughout the city.
Who is OSA?
OSA is Open Space Alliance, which is the public-private partnership that Steve Hindy gifted us here in North Brooklyn.
But just to play devil's advocate, sort of putting the money back into a general park fund would help maybe neighborhoods that need more help with their parks. Like, we have rich people here, we have, these parks in some places like, Brownsville and stuff where, or parts of Queens where their parks aren't sexy, like, what do
But
they
Community
get?
Board 1, which OSA covers, we're North Brooklyn, like McCarran, Transmitter, those are nice parks.
Right.
South Side, there's Sergeant Doherty Park, which is right by the entrance to the BQE, which is like the basketball court is all buckling. There's like
Right.
no plants there. It's just asphalt. There's parks on there's like 100 park spaces in Community Board 1 that could benefit. I mean, go to Cooper Park. I mean, the tennis courts don't have nets. There's no fencing around the children's playground.
So
which-
OSA would still benefit those?
yeah,
Supposed to.
yeah, it's supposed to. It's
The
supposed
money
to
that
benefit-
they make is,
It's
theoretically
supposed to go to all-
supporting all of these parks.
Yeah, all the parks in Community Board 1.
And they make their money how, Christine? Explain their fundraising.
Well, their primary strategy has been a series of concerts that costs approximately $1 million to produce, and that generates, once they cover their costs, generates between $250,000 and $50,000, and $500,000. If anybody who works in a nonprofit, that's a lot of money to spend. You're like spending $2 to raise $1. There's probably better ways to fundraise that are less impactful toward the community. They also now do an annual fundraising event at the pool before it opens.
See, my concern about rich donors, and I agree with you, there's no shortage now, unlike the past. My problem with rich donors is rich donor conditions, which
Right.
often involve barriers to space,
Or
accessibility.
Well, but it doesn't have to be, now I'm putting on my nonprofit fundraising hat, this doesn't have to be a rich donor. If people saw real impact with their dollars, they would donate to, like if you saw that the garbage cans were getting emptied every other day, they weren't overflowing every time you went to the park, maybe you would give $25. And maybe 1,000 people would give $25. And maybe out of that, and then they're more committed to the park. You can really raise real money from small donations.
And have been successful in the past doing so.
People have lots of nonprofits are funded by small, but it's work. It's work. You've got to build these relationships. You've got to really kind of be attuned. But, you know, a small donor also then will probably volunteer, you know, when you do a park cleanup. They'll probably do. McCarran Dog Run, I raised, I don't know how much money in the weekend. You know, I think it was like $3,000 or $4,000 in a weekend, just because we were in a big fundraising project, and that was just me emailing 30, 40 people, and like people I didn't even know were like sending me Facebook messages like, meet me at the park, I got a check for $400, how much more money do you need? You know, people want to see things get better. People want to see things.
Do you like the direction the park is taking, regardless of your involvement or knowledge of the behind the scenes? Do you like the direction the park has taken since you've been here?
I love the pool. I think the pool is great. It's right up there with the ferry and Dollar Oysters. The track, I'm glad it's there, even though I don't use it as much as I should. I wish it were a little prettier, but mostly, yeah. I think it's.
I mean, it's definitely better than it was in the early 90s. I mean, I remember laying out trying to get some sun and being harassed by neighborhood kids for thinking that this was like someplace where you could get a tan, you know?
Maybe because my perspective is skewed towards being a male. I have no idea what it's like to go to a setting like a park, but I'm guessing that women undergo an experience that I couldn't possibly comprehend. I don't have to worry about going to the park, taking off my shirt and having, you know.
You never know. Might get
now, maybe, you know.
But I mean, I think there's been a lot of nice improvements. I think there's still, I think it's shameful that there's not more bathrooms, you know. I think the ladies' room in the field house is disgusting. And
Yes, the day-to-day little stuff that needs so much more love.
I mean, we had to cry to get the garbage picked up near the dog run because it hadn't been picked up for a week, you know, like.
And begging for porta potties, you know, that's a humiliating kind of thing. Even that we even have to think about as taxpayers. We've already paid for this park once, and then for us to be able to get things like portalets, we need a private company come in and put on concerts to raise money that we then have to beg for them to spend the money on things like day-to-day maintenance and portalets because they're too busy scheming about an ice rink that needs to go in the winter time and tennis bubbles and all that stuff. And you know, they never, when they put the field lights around the soccer field and did that track and made that all nice, I don't think they really realized how much it was going to then be used, almost round the clock.
Yeah.
Those soccer players, they do not stop. And, you know, nature calls, and very little has been done to, you know, accommodate, you know, nature.
Yeah, I mean, if you join the gym, you can use their bathroom. The gym is really nice, too, I have to say. I joined that. And that's
Which gym?
The
In
gym
the rec
at the
center.
pool, at the rec center.
Meredith and I have sat in meetings where they're like, well, you know, when the pool opens, there'll be bathrooms there. People will be able to use them.
Not really.
Not really. And how do they know that they could go, you know, like that's an option? I mean, there's a lack of communication. I mean, just, you know, at the beginning of the summer, they seeded the area behind the field house, and the gardener got angry at the dog people for letting their dogs run loose because he had just seeded. And they were like, did you tell us you seeded? Did you put up signs? No. So how did we know that you just seeded? If you told us that, we would change our behavior. We're not assholes. Some people are assholes, but not everybody, you know, and some people want to see grass.
I can say that living here all my life and having gone to the park all my life, there are a lot more assholes now than
Well, yeah,
there
and
ever
there's
have
more
been.
people.
Well, that wasn't the question. Are there more assholes now?
We're going into overall. I'm one of those people that likes ruined pornography or something because I thought the park was beautiful when it was officially closed. I loved it. I loved the graffiti. I love
Like
graffiti.
breaking into the pool and stuff.
Yeah, I love
That's
breaking.
really cool.
I'm not going to call it breaking into the pool.
The
But yes.
waterfront was amazing.
No, I loved it. I loved it.
Waterfront was.
The waterfront
Fantastic
was really
experiences.
fun.
I love the park. In the 90s, I hung out on the Lower East Side though, a lot. I was part of the punk scene there. I went to sidewalk cafes. I had absolutely no consciousness, comprehension whatsoever of myself as an agent of gentrification, as a person who was sitting there and was contributing to something much more complex that not always positive for people in the community. I bet you if you would have told me having coffee and eggs sitting outside that I was some asshole who was, fucking up the neighborhood, I would have been as bewildered, I think, as many of the kids who are out at Five Leaves and Locale right now.
But not meaning to sound so old, but when we were young and having fun, when the hell were we out at 10 a.m. having breakfast? Like,
I didn't wake up
Williamsburg
till
used to
2
be
o'clock.
desolate before noon.
It's still desolate before noon. I live on Bedford. There's like, the artisanal cream cheese at the now Bagel Smith is, that will have a line, but that, it's still, quiet on Bedford before noon.
Do you like the direction the neighborhood is lurching towards?
No.
No.
I think one thing though that is amazing about what's happening is how when I moved here there were all these like little cliques, and now if you've been here 10 years, you've been here 20 years, you have a natural friendship starting point. So the people that I've met in the last 5 or 6 years are amazing, and I didn't meet them before, and I'm glad I'm glad we're still here.
I just feel like there's like the sands through the hourglass are going, and my time here is limited, and I don't know where I would go. Like Queens? The horror!
I hope not. Well, I mean, Queens is awesome in some places, but I hope you stay. You too, Christine. I don't know.
Yeah. I just work a 12-step program on the whole thing, and I just deal with today.
That's a very good policy.
And it's such a load of shit too, if you believe that. But I try. If I worry about it too much, I will make myself insane.
Yeah.
I can get misty
Yeah.
thinking about it.
Thank you for listening, ladies and gentlemen. That's all we have. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/bittersweetbrooklyn. I'm Dennis with Meredith.